By popular demand, I've been asked to do Italy versus Spain, and so I found a little bit of time. I haven't had a lot of time to analyse the game, but I've had a look at it at the moment from an Italy perspective.
The conclusions that I've drawn through watching this is that Antonio Conte's 5-3-2 is the perfect antidote to Spain's fluent 4-3-3. I think Conte acknowledged that perhaps De Gea was a little bit of a weak link during the build-up phase, and his man-orientated press made it very difficult for De Gea to really play a possession game and build out from the back. He went direct quite soon. Then when you look at the physical battle between the game, it was a bit of a mismatch because the Italian side was incredibly aggressive and strong in the air, whereas Spain had players like Iniesta, De Silva, who were perhaps not going to be as confrontational within an aggressive battlefield. So that meant the game was played more on Italian terms. The compactness made it very difficult to break through and break down, and Spain were always going to be occasional vulnerable to counterattacks because they didn't really implement a counter-pressing style. When they lost the ball, there wasn't that famous reaction, retrieve the ball in 6 to 8 seconds. It was all done at kind of a leisurely pace, and so it allowed Italy to build up play, and the Italians were clever. They drew Spain into a press, stretched them and opened up passing lanes, allowing them to penetrate into half spaces, gain numerical advantages in certain lines in and around Iniesta, which then in turn created free players and allowed them to progress up the field. And then when they did get the chance to get on the front foot, moving forwards in synchronisation and the risk taking to put players into the box was absolutely courageous, but it was very, very exciting to watch an Italian team play with a little bit of adventure.
And in this first little frame that you can see in the background here now, you've got to love Italian defending. The way they surround the ball, look at the player on the ball, he's ultimately surrounded by 5-6 players in almost an hexagon type shape. The central areas, the compactness with which Italy get to, and their awareness of key space in order to defend is as good as any team that I've seen. But when you defend this narrow and this compact and this close together, what you have to be able to do then is, when you retain possession, is be able to play forwards out of pressure and excel in transition. And as you'll see as the footage rolls on now, winning the ball back in these areas, they've got to play through a mass of pressure and play through lines, but then they've got to have the energy, the willingness, the running, the power and desire to get in behind. Comparison to England, you can see the shape is nowhere near as good, but from a counter-attacking transition perspective, this is a great opportunity because Iceland are open here. There's no runners willing to go in behind. 50 yards of space in behind that Iceland back line. Final third, and even examples like this again, which I showed the other day, with lack of willingness to have runners to go in behind, where Kane would have this pass, or the fullback has to go in, would isolate the centre-back, leaving him an easy pass or to be able to carry the ball. You kind of see the difference between Italy's transitional play and England's. In terms of reviewing then how Italy set up to defend in a low block predominantly, Conte has not really changed much with the Italian side for how he ran his Juventus team in the way that he implements it. The same back three defenders, who for me are the best defensive trio unit I've seen in football. So difficult to break down. Individually you can question one or two things about the game, but as a unit they are phenomenal. And so what you'll tend to see is, look how close and compact they are as a back three. And it's the same with the midfield three. The midfield three really, historically within Italian teams, they don't break. They try and stay more central. They look after the half space central zones, and a striker will always drop back in to make a fourth player, and wing backs will make judgment calls on whether they want to go into central areas or whether they're going to go into the back line to make a back five. So it's close together, it's symmetry, it's in unison, but what I love as well is how they operate in synchronisation. They move up and down the field together, Italy, so fluently. It's quite enjoyable to watch. Now, historically, Spanish teams have played very much like Barcelona, counter-pressing once they lose it. But the counter-pressing in this game was non-existent, and perhaps that's because they're playing a more slightly older squad. Perhaps like Iniesta and David Silva can't counter-press in ways that they may be used to, I'm not sure. Here, it makes it easy for Italy, but what Italy do really well here is they pull them apart. You'll see the wide centre-back drops down the side of the box. in order to open up passing lanes between the forward players that allows them to play through central areas into the half space, into central midfielders. And it's just subtle little movements like this that is really clever. And so Italy can find space and can work the ball into central areas, which is something England couldn't do against Iceland, allowing them to penetrate between the lines. I'll just show you this again. So normally there would be an erratic press here for 6-7 seconds trying to force a mistake. Italy have got time to get into shape, to spread out. And if I just stop the play here, this front three is getting stretched both horizontally and vertically. It's opening up passing lanes. The second wave of pressure is too far away from the front guys pressing, and Chiellini's clever enough to spot this and move in, and that's what the hybrid. And Iniesta's in two minds whether to press or whether to hold, because he's a bit slow and he's just a yard off the pace. It allows them to penetrate through half spaces, and you can see effectively it's 3v1 in this line with Italy using the hybrid defensive centre mid. Iniesta's outnumbered, he can't mark both the half spaces and the centre back moving into central midfield, and it allows for central circulation and then penetration between the lines, where Italy really committed players forward. They got 4 or 5 players into the box almost every single time, and that was quite impressive to see, because that's not always a feature of Italian play. They're usually quite conservative. What I'm referencing here with Spain's press being really slow and access into central areas, this is really too easy for them to get the ball into central midfield. The pressure as well is too slow, but look at the difference when Italy get forced into the wide areas to say when maybe England get forced in. They're looking so quickly to move it horizontally out of pressure so they don't get trapped into wide areas, so they can really catch Spain into a lethargic press, draw them in, create space in round Iniesta, if you can see, and it just again makes it so easy for them to make passes where they again got 4 or 5, 6 players getting into that box. I think you can see that this has been worked on, drawing teams in to create space between the first and second line here again. They're getting into these tight areas, but they work it out of there. They work it out of pressure into non-pressure situations, and then look for quick penetrating passes through the lines. So even again, you can begin to see a very deliberate pattern here. He's recognised that the presses are really slow, quite unintense, but look how he gets them drawn into a press and creates huge space between the front 2 or 3 players that are pressing. Look now, they're kind of given up on the press, but the space has already been created. Another example there, the half space to half space outnumbering them in that line where Iniesta's just constantly outnumbered, and they're able to work the ball out of pressure. In terms of how Conte sets his sides up to press, there's nothing different. He wants to stop Spain playing out from the back, so the 2 strikers nearly always split to the 2 centre-backs. Historically, he's usually used a wing-back to come and press as a front 3, rather than using, like in this example, where he has both 2 of the central midfielders pressing incredibly high. So it's kind of a front 4 that's forcing Spain to go long. And what I love about the Italian side is they can't be accused of being conservative. They really did press high in this game at the right moments at the right time. This is the wing back here almost making it a front 3 and then a front. What we can see here is Spain struggling again to get a little bit of momentum and control. Italy close together, compact, moving in synchronisation, preventing play through the middle, but then spotting the triggers of when to go into an intensive press. That collective awareness forced Spain into mistakes. Here's another great example of Italy's compact defending and awareness of key space, but also their transitional play, their counter-attacking. There's no way through for Iniesta here. They're on the break, they're on the front foot, they're playing forwards, but again, look at the willingness of the runners Spain do not like to defend, as I said earlier. They don't like to track back, and they're not the quickest side. But Italy break at speed, such positivity, and 4 or 5 players. It's clear game plan to get at least 5 players in the box. Conte's obviously seen something, doing his homework, to say that Spain can't defend crosses, and that if they get the ball into the box often enough, they're going to get some joy.